This is a tape about speaking truth to religion, which for a variety of reasons I do not want to do. For example, it will be taken to the jump and holder by British hypocrites who began their career saying, "We don't want to be compared. There are better things to do," in order to announce hostilities because it doesn't compare to the doctrines of their Swami Nostra siphoned from their guru, etc. That's just one example. There are so many things that religion impacts upon somebody, particularly who's grown up under the sword of religion in the city of Pittsburgh, the boondocks of the city of Pittsburgh. You know, you can't help but be stereotyped as for your race, your generation, your economic bracket in the eyes of people who interpret God, or they don't admit it's an interpretation. They announce the facts of God. Uh, um, get dragged kicking and screaming into this video and discussion because the jumping hauler has an open mic, but even though I like to talk, there's open mic bullies get pretty worked up when it comes to religion. I don't mean to censor anybody. I don't like politics very much because of political violence. I like politics when it's about freedom of association and making choices. Then politics can be very beautiful because it involves persuasion. You might have two good choices and you have to make a decision. How do you rate two good schools? You know, two great tennis players, three fantastic Russian skaters. I mean, what do? You listen to the thought that they bring to the table and make a decision, and hopefully it turns out to be a wise decision about where to put your attention. I mean, when it comes to people who I'm told are really very bad, it can be, I think, I'd like to listen, see for myself. I mean, I listen to Doug Yo and Farrakhan. These guys seem interesting. I don't like to have to pass judgment on this stuff. I just want to be a scholar. But, the swoopy doop comes along. When I was a kid, I was just a kid. Forbes Field watching Matty Alou. It made a real impression on me. I really like Matty Alou and his team. Bill Mass and those guys. And I saw Jesus Alou. And they said, no, don't say Jesus Alou. Pronounce Jesus Alou. I was real scared. I never wanted to pronounce the holy name. I always say Weezo. In fact, one of my pastors came to me, and he's a man of the discipline. He said, Jim, you need Weezo. Weezo seems Shakespearean. He's cool, except that it's mean what they did to him. I don't like what they did to him. No. I mean, God, like if I was there, I wouldn't have tried to stop it. Where were they? These chivalrous. Well, you're supposed to call them cranks, right? Because you're supposed to say the opposite of what they say about themselves. I got set up by Jerry Patterson, Frank Zappa, and don't know who. Because my papa wrote a book called Humanizing School. Oh, the child of a humanist. We'll get him good. We'll get him to insult the holy name in satire while we pimp him on a girl who doesn't tell him about her marriage. We're slick, we're slicky dick, we're slicky tricky dick. So they say, he thought of Satan, it's clear who Satan is. Here. Well, I get nice letters about sensitivity and joy from Cory Booker. I don't think he's insinuating with somebody who's Satan. No. And Pope Francis, like one of my tweets, I said, write a prayer on water to God. And I'm glad I shared that because Pope Francis liked my tweet. It made me feel better. I don't profess to be a man of God, and I certainly don't profess to be a man. But they've got a right to call me whatever they want, you know. I'm like, oh, there's this to choose between. See, the way I see it, divination has some meaning to me. Like if you look at the things I found, I'd say I looked at the image frame by frame because that made sense to the mind of the listener. But the truth is, I didn't have the equipment to look at it frame by frame. I just clicked where I hoped I would be able to find what happened and the frame dissolve. And the minute you call that divination, you banish the spirit of divination, is the way I see it. Never, no. Never attribute a power of God to yourself as a human being. No, don't do it. That's why I don't pray, because it's presumption. I don't believe I should make the presumption. They say, oh, well, you'll fall into the hands of the Wibble, the devil. Not the Wibble, that's the Bible. The devil. No, God is the one who will make the decision if anybody does. I don't presume to petition anything about it because I know that it's outside my reach. When my grandmother died, I found her Bible marked to Micah 6:8. Mm-hmm. That's what I figured. Common sense is equally distributed throughout everybody. Now, don't get me wrong, I like listening to these guys. Digger is Rush. And that dude, Belcon, he's spot on sometimes. He really is. I know there are lapses and things that they get accused of, and God help me. Either of them ever get near me. But their belief is deep, their faith is deep, and they want good for their loved ones. And I really feel terrible remorse that there has been conflict. And I know that the tricks of the trade are to trip up somebody who's green, who doesn't get the holy picture, make them look like a flop, like the story I told you with Donahue and the way they set me up at Pitt. And they had Lord of the Flies charm Zugnog when she comes swooping down on you with Beatrice clock, making a laughing stock of the presumptive minor leaguer who walked out on Bill Mays for Clemente and writes some poetry. One of my influences, my mother used to say, beware the man with the one book. I know she didn't mean me, but I only got one book of poetry. That's a good one. I worked hard on it. That's layman's poetry, don't get me wrong. It's not Balakian. I know pinch words from the Surg film of Arabian bracelets. I don't sell hardened bodyguards from James Bond films on Greek myths like Penis Gabriel. I would never in a million years have done to somebody what was done to me. So people can just stop it with the stupidities about it. It's beyond my comprehension. And if you think that's cool, that's your enzyme holiness. But I think it's sick. How do I play the odds? That's because that's the only thing they're doing. By being as law abiding as possible, by not owning weapons, by sort of praying against the way that the impingers manipulate. Some believe love is a form of slavery to your holy, your destiny. I know some responsible people who don't believe that we stand a chance after death, that we're just a DNA corporation that comes apart and then there's nothing, you know. But some people believe that love enslaves us to our fate, how we work our love. It defines our outcome in terms of the way that we're judged. Tolkien had some pretty good stories like Berian and Lúthien. One of them was real special. You know, Elvin, the Swede, and the other was Mortal, one of the Huskies. And they were warned, don't try to elope together because it will confer on the Elven mortality. And that's a grave shadow to add to the cosmos of the magical ones. That's Tolkien stuff. I mean, you recognize it. I'm not saying there's any unicorns around, griffins or anything like that. I'm not trying to sell you a make believe. But it serves as an idea. Some good ideas are good ideas. You know, they really are. Like it's a good idea to love somebody. If you do, if you have the power to control yourself. And that's how I got mixed up with this diabolical stuff was I was neuro traumatized and caused me seizures to be rejected. And they thought, oh, we'll program the humanists to go Frankenstein crazy. Ha 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 ha. It didn't quite work. I mean, they got a letter out of me. The letter was used to compromise me and spin the gyrations of Stephen King's madness at me and the various dog sniffing routines that Clint Eastwood comes up. They're looking for the painted dildo or something that will prove that I'm in league. They cock and bull me with jokes that they already know what the. It's like, what's my line? Guesswork. What you they expect you to say in return to what they prompt. In other words, it's the illusion of hustlers. And you could say, well, I think I will engage this in a learned, disciplined dialectic about whether or not that's totem. It's obviously Oppo world manipulation. Martha Gellhorn wrote to me once. I don't have her letter anymore. These ridiculous people took it. They made sure I don't have it anymore. But I remember it. I mean, I still have the letter. It's like when I gave, they said, Flip said, don't pass the tape, pass the copy. So I handed the copy back to him. The copy of the postcard was the copy once I had read it. Martha wrote to me, and I retained that letter. I do wish I had it. It was neat. But neat is one thing, and the letter is another. I remember what she said. She said if there's preachers or something that believe this kind of poppycock, my advice is just to forget it. Now, some of this stuff they won't let me forget because they think I'm a voodoo agent who makes them twist their ankle and stuff. So they have to out-harness that by playing Blackwater in the cesspool of multiculturalism or something. You know the stuff. I mean, like, I can be quite honest. I see some of the sincerity of this poppycock in, like, Rush Limbaugh, right? Who clearly gave thought to the spirit of the people if he had anything to do with what happened to me, I was tortured. The victims of the American enterprise. When he said, I feel your pain, I think it was true. But it was like projected masochism. In other words, he himself may not have been a masochist, but he enjoyed the redemptive aspect that comes with suffering vicariously. And that made him impossible for me to hate because I survived what was done to me psychologically and spiritually for the most part. A lot of the time, I felt that Islam had helped me overcome the implanted neuroplasm. And in fact, for a long time, I so closely identified with the view of David Weck, the judge in Allegheny County, that people have to understand the Holocaust, that I accepted the Holocaust community had tortured me. I blanked it out. I didn't address it. I didn't face it. I didn't look at it face to face. But psychologically, the sentiment was a liqueur in which I immersed myself in talking to some of the survivors of the Holocaust who engaged me and said I was important to Allegheny County, which is something that these UW dialectical weirds. They're weirds. They don't have any morals at all. Should have thought about when they yanked me away from my deaf friend in the name of pursuing a stereotype that was guaranteed to work by Moon Unit Zappa and Penis Sinfield. And you have to decide whether or not you will forgive that we were torturing you and molesting you. And I mean, that's why I don't want to get into these tapes, because what Martha Gellhorn said holds sway. My advice is just to forget it. They won't let me forget it. And my advice is just to forget it, so I don't go around trying to upstage the Almighty with my views of religion. But I said I would speak truth to religion, and I'm just a humble man. I don't presume. I think it would be preposterous. People say, oh, it's a discipline. I believe that. I've heard biblical scholars talk the tongue and walk the walk, and they were brilliant. And they understood, and they knew it, they studied, and they could point out with detail what was going on. And they had a deep, deep force about them. And they're a joy to be around. And I admire them, and it gives them happy families and extended friendships, and that's nice. Not that anybody's ever been particularly charitable to me as a deaf man. I mean, I have rock stars who don't like me. And if you ever want to be a victim of non-charitable, you get a rock star after your butt. But I allowed one of them to make me believe that the quality of life argument was a divinity idea. I mean, I can see that, spirituality contributes to your quality of life no matter what. Poor, famous, unknown, whatever. I can see that it would. But this was the idea that only if you are good, you deserve a standard of living improvement. So I was supposed to make myself appear penitent for having been beaten half to death. Penitence for having been beaten half to death was the neurohypnotic message. Why is that? Because they hired some famously blubbery little girl to come on to me when I was a traumatized, frightened little boy in hiding and put up PEEP for the gang that took me to see Deliverance. So they could do it, really, really do it to me for as long as they wanted and call themselves holy. It's mighty peculiar. Mighty peculiar behavior. See Roberto up there. He served in the reserve. I don't know why he didn't speak with King at Ford's Field. He had something else he had to do, but it would have been fitting because he was a Puerto Rican leader who loved the poor. It's bad to spread rumors that give innuendo to things like that. Nobody knows what Martin Luther King said in Ford's Field, not even the people in Atlanta. It's 1962. Vince Irini found an archive with the date stamped right over his forehead, which I printed. I showed with the university. But he made a fuss of that. But when he saw the neuroplasm smashed over the face of Jimmy Cuervo, he said, oh no, Cuervo's trying to be famous. And that's supposed to make me say religion is poop. like Zappa did, so that I'd walk into the trap of Donna Who. So there's a lot of reasons, I'm like anybody else. I don't really like getting yanked into stuff. Could go through this religion, do apologize, sprinkle the 40 ministrations over my purity of ethics and honor concerning the Jews, and I could do all that stuff. Doesn't amount to anything. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not after anybody. I can identify some people I think should have been arrested. Now, as for um, being a person worthy of love, I'm an old guy. I don't want to burden the girl I pick it as an admirer. I love her. That's just a statement of fact. You could argue, oh, it was psychologically worked out by profile. It doesn't change that much. Some marriages are arranged. This isn't going to lead to marriage. I know that. She needs a boy who wants her own age, and I'm looking forward to saying I approve. I'm looking forward to saying I approve. My life was pretty much chopped down by the bully pulpit. I don't admire the people who did it. I don't think they have much sense. I kind of like Clint Eastwood. I mean, I have worries about him and stuff. I felt he admitted that Jimmy Carrey could have been made into something better and different than he was by child abuse. It's pretty simple. And then I don't, no, well, I'm not. There's no danger because of the rock stars. It's going to get carried away with stories of Catholic child abuse and so on because the rock stars did with, so Catholic child abuse. They did it together. So they form, oh, if one, we don't agree, and they don't agree, then it's obviously not true because we're enemies to one another. No. That there's a whole school of thought that regards permission to do evil in order to find out what's going on. It's like the people who approved of Rabelais because they had to listen to the confessional. And Rabelais' ribald stuff was approved of by certain quarters of the church because it depicted the spiritual condition of the medieval child, all grown up in times of darkness. By which I mean the fright and awe of bubonic plague and stuff. I mean, ooh, even thinking of it, you want to ward it off. But Hollywood will do it. In Hollywood, they come, they say, then let there be. Star Trek guys come out. I mean, you could argue, you can make a satire of Dugio as a Star Trek from the ruling class, the guys who come out and start throwing lightning bolts at each other. I don't see why anybody would want to start the stupid way they started. I don't like the way the Russians were depicted. Everybody knows it's a fact of my case history that I was angry when people talked them down after they took down the Berlin Wall. And that whole story about how we backstabbed them with the laws in the Ukraine is a mess. I don't know about no warmonger. Nope. I don't just, I'd rather things were normal. So we can go to school and discuss issues and make choices. They say not one size fits all. Some people don't want democracy. It's better to have something that's workable and keeps people happy than a democracy being overthrown by publicity hounds, like that horrible monster Disney contra. I don't even like this. He's another one I don't like to say his name. I call him Weasler. God, he's awful. They say people have a morbid fascination with him. Ugh. But there's a problem when you get into some of this stuff about Weasel and Weasler. Is that Weasel can forgive. Not even Weasler can overcome the power of Weasel. Gets dumb. People should do their best to be helpful and good to one another. But when they do and get along and they work together, they're expected to do it for other people. And so they say, who don't get along. So they end up saying, well, what's the point with us getting along with each other if we're just going to have to break our behinds helping people who can't get along? It's just going to bring us down. Derek Parfit used to be on about that. If you try to make the royal class of famous people help the poors, they'll just make everybody poors. Well, I'm with Antonio Guterres, UN General Secretary, who says it's not one or the other, but they got to get together. We all got to get together. Humanizing the school is insane. It talks about 4 or 5 different ways you can come at the educational project of teaching about farms, from the economics or civics, etc. So it's something to learn from. The intellectual has been addled by the fairly common assumption there's only one real method of inquiry, the scientific method. Serious minded have either warred on this assumption or accepted it, but this is not the choice. Neither is the choice between the naturalistic method and the metaphysical method. Both science and objectivity are methods available to man for seeking more valid and reliable appraisal of reality, which is quite as much as man can aspire to. Science helps to achieve this by measuring and describing the things that can be perceived precisely definitive terms. Objectivity reduces phenomenological spread. It furnishes a basis for decisions in circumstances that the method of science cannot reach. So he argues ways of conceptualizing learning, because school is a learning situation. And his goal is curriculum development, which in '68 largely meant incorporating the Black community into white schools. Now it means building echo schools, schools started for climate tech. And they attack this as Satanism. Art does stand in prejudice when it goes to work for such causes as war. Oh, art does stand in prejudice when it goes to work for such causes as war. Oh, that's Satanism. Thank you for explaining that to me. I've always wondered what Satanism is. Satanism is the belief that art stands in prejudice when used for projects like war. Oh, it's not Satanism. Where do you get humanism is Satanism? Franklin Graham, the sweetheart, who literally said Hitler was one of our promising young chaplains, also sent tastelessly sent me, honestly sent me, directly sent me, that humanism is the greatest threat to America since communism. That's my daddy's book there. My daddy wrote a book on teaching about communism, which is just as eloquent and thoughtful as this one is. So what gives? How is full dimensional learning it's then full dimensional teaching? Satanism. I'm not gonna get it. At the source of potential education, human experience includes 1, the humanistic ethical, 2, the creative aesthetic, 3, the scientific qualitative, 4, the vocational utilitarian. Sweetheart, he offers an approach to curricular criticism. In other words, if you disagree with the curriculum, you can criticize it, and he offers you a better approach maybe than just slinging mud at it. You're up on a pedestal of holy man, slinging mud at things you don't dare to try to consider human. And by human, I mean good, inborn with goodness. Sick Micah 6:8, the ability to perceive and act on what is good. So obviously that stands in the way of giving a good read to a decent book, a book that considers things like the cultural contribution to a farming society of their lore, not just how much money they make in this. A book that dares to be circumspect about the values that are harnessed by the schools. For utilitarian and vocational purposes, some of which should be subject to question. It's not a bad book. I have mixed feelings about some of the things that happened at the University of Pittsburgh and some of the things that my father was at peace with, because look what was done to me. It's an Edgar Cayce mystery. But the Edgar Cayce mystery stuff comes from, I don't want to throw mud back. I don't understand what happened. I literally don't understand what happened. And so I'm left with the imponderables. I don't know who got me into this and what the hell they want. So with all respect, I'm not going to take on the bully pulpit people, except to say that the open mic wasn't really a call for papers on religion. It was just poetry. And if you ever want to hear me read one of my poems, I'll be happy to read it or recite it to you. I put a lot of hard work into my poetry. If you want me to talk about the woman I love, that's, I've been exploited as a deaf man with those kinds of anglings. I appreciate it if we kept it civil. She's a beautiful human being. I have some questions about what's going on in the mechanizations around our media. She's in a role, playing a role. Scares me half to death, because the world is being pimped. Climate change is, let's say, an informal way of forcing women to do things that are against their better judgment. We have to do a better job at all of those things. And I certainly appreciate and don't appreciate various things that go on with respect to how I'm regarded concerning women. So let's just keep that stuff civil, shall we?